Hey, what's happening, y'all? It's Eric here. I have something really special I want to cover with you today, and that is the Fetch API. And you are probably going to hear this word API a gazillion times. And it's actually a really cool thing. It's called an application programming interface. One of the most common ways to communicate with an application programming interface, 99% of the time, you're going to be sending what we call JSON. And that's actually what I have right here on my screen right now. This is from Giphy's API. And I'm going to show you how to like access their API and do different things with it. But right now, I just want to talk a little bit about this JSON, okay? What's really cool is without fetch or without any other code, I can actually take a piece of their API, put it right in my browser, and this is technically making a GET request to their API. So your browser is actually capable of a GET request, and that's one of the most common requests that you can make to an API. When you look at JSON, it's basically like looking at JavaScript, and it actually stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And it sounds like it should be part of JavaScript, but technically it's just a way of sending data through the web. So we have data, and then we have an array here, and this array has a whole bunch of images. You see how long this is? It's just 10 images from this particular application programming interface. Some of them will send you back like just maybe 10 strings or 10 images or something like that. This one has quite a few here. And actually all of these right here, see it says images? Here's an HD image, downsize large. They have like a whole bunch. Here's the original one right here. You can actually take this out of the browser here, or I even click on it, and you can see this is one of the rain gifts I got back from the API. And so what I want to do is I want to use that in my program. With the use of fetch, I can go get this data and use it in my program, okay? I created a local API so that I could kind of show you the ins and outs of it. It's a car inventory API that I made, and it's running locally, and I'm going to go ahead and access that with fetch right now. I'm going to make a GET request to the API endpoint, put it at the word API /car, so it's really clear what's happening here. Okay, so here, check this out. This is the one I just made. I'm not covering over how to create an API in this tutorial, but what I'm covering is how to consume an API, right? And when you consume APIs and you do things with APIs that don't belong to you, we're pretending like this one doesn't belong to me, right? Then this is basically what a front-end developer does. It doesn't concern itself with what the API is doing behind the scenes, but it is able to consume APIs and get their data and do stuff with it. So now that I can see that I made a successful GET request here in my thing here. Oh, here was here. Oh yeah, here's my index. Now what I can do is I can go up here and I can fetch this in my program, okay? So I'm going to write fetch, okay? And fetch takes, it's a method. It's actually a method of window. This confuses a lot of people. They don't know where fetch comes from. It comes from the window object. The window object has a lot of different things. It has alerts and timeout, set timers and things like that. None of which you have to call window to get to because your browser already knows where fetch belongs from, so it's optional. But I'm gonna throw it in here real quick so you can see it. Now I'm gonna fetch this URL. This is an API endpoint, okay? Now all I have to do is I have to write a .then, which you could actually chain this up above. I just like going to the next level because it looks a little nicer, and it's gonna send me back data. And then I'm gonna get at that data, by typing in data.json, okay? In parens. So I'm kind of invoking this method of the data that comes back. Now that gets returned. This is the absolute shortest, most concise syntax you can write for fetching an API. And I wanted to show you that first. In a second, I'm going to show you how to expand it, and will probably make a little more sense to you if you're anything like me. Sometimes the short, super like terse syntax is hard to look at. So I'm going to write it for you a little bit longer in a moment. But for now, let me show you the shortest way to write it. Some people like that. I want you to have both options, okay? So now I just need another .then. And what this returns, okay, this .then returns to itself, will then become what this comes. So if I get data here, and then I log it, okay, now I'm getting a data, okay? Okay, cool. Now I'm getting data back, and we can see that right here. Look at that. The same data that you saw here because my browser can make a GET request. Now, before I get carried away, this is the first episode in a series about fetch. Okay, so I'm going to show you a lot more things about fetch. Today, I'm just covering the GET request, or in this video, I should say, because your day is not the same as my day, or whatever I'm trying to say there. But the GET request is the most important, and I think it's the easiest one to understand conceptually. So we're doing that. Okay. Now, notice I wrote window here, window.fetch, and it worked just fine, right? I can get rid of window as well, and it will work just fine. Not a problem, okay? And I'm not even going to keep this up here because I don't need it anymore. Now, I can see that I've gotten this data. It's in my console log right here, which means I can do something with it, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to first show you a little different way of writing this. If you want to see this in like a bigger, like more, let's say less terse syntax, okay? And actually to loop through it and do something with it, then we'll have to. So why don't I do this real quick? I'm going to say, get rid of this, do curlies, because I have an arrow function here. And I could also, again, with the curlies, now you notice I added curlies, I can write data here, and it's going to actually do the same thing, okay? Yes, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to say div hashtag cars. This is where I'm going to put all my cars. Here, data square bracket 0, okay? Square bracket 0 gets us one car, right? Just gets us the Aston Martin here. And then how do we get to the next thing? Well, it's an object you can see here, right? And a lot of times when you're working with APIs, you just got to come to this console and try to understand what you're looking at. So since I'm in an object now, I can say .make, right? Or I can say .anything. So I can say .make or whatever I want, and I can get that. So let's refresh here. And now I have the Aston Martin. All right, so we're right on track. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to take this and put this into our DOM or into our website, right? We actually want to put all of them there, but I think it's easier to start with just one. So what I want to do right now is this var content equals, and I'm going to put in here this like this, because I'm going to actually expand this in a second. So I'm going to use a template literal like so. These have to have curlies, okay? And then now what I'm going to do, instead of just console logging it, I'm going to say document dot get element document dot query selector is what I want to use, not the element by ID. I could use either. And I'm going to say quotes hashtag cars, and I'm going to say dot append. And what I want to append is this content right here. So let's go ahead and check that out real quick. Okay, so refresh, and boy, I got the Aston Martin. That's awesome. So what I could actually do here, and this is why I set it up this way, is I want to like basically create something out of this. I'm going to say div, and now what I'm going to do is close the div, and this kind of gives me some more control over how it's going to be presented. And I could put, say, a class on here of car. I'll just say cars because it's going to be one car. Okay. And now I can go to the index. I'm not going to create a style sheet. I'm just going to do this right here in line. I'm going to say car, and the car, it was a class. So I'm going to say dot car. The car is going to have a border of 2px solid CCC. Okay, that's just a light gray. Okay, now let's take a look and see what we've got. Oh, one other thing, when you switch to using HTML in here, we want to append child. That means the div will become a child of cars. Okay, the easiest way to do this is we're going to say var div equals, let's call this our container, car container equals document dot create element, and the element is going to be a div. Okay, and then the div, so then we're going to say car container dot inner HTML is going to equal content. And now we can append this car container as a child, and we'll be in good shape to see our data. Or let's inspect this real quick. Inspect. Okay, and we have a class of car in here. Everything actually looks exactly the way we want, except for I used some React syntax again on that. Don't need quotes around that. Oh, boom, bada bing. Okay, cool. So now we have the Aston Martin in there. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get some more stuff from the API. So if you remember, let's actually log it again. Or you know what? I tell you what, let's get them all real quick. So notice I'm getting 1, and I'm getting 1 by going to the index of 0, right? So the next thing I want to do is I want to expand that by saying for, get a for loop going here. And the array is data because it's all coming back as an array. And then what I can do is I can put all this stuff in here just like so. And what do you think will happen if I refresh right now? It's going to put in Aston Martin 5 times because there was 5 things coming back from the API. But I don't want it to say Aston Martin 5 times. I want it to say all of the cars that we got. So what I can do is I can use the index in here to get to that. Now, if you are unfamiliar with for loops, you will want to dial into those when you're using APIs. There are other loops which are good too, but the for loop, I believe, is the most customizable. It's a little bit more syntax, but I do have an awesome tutorial on that as well. Check out my channel. I think you'll like it. But if you know for loops, let's move on. So I'm going to put I here, and that's going to give me the name of all of them, right? Perfect. Now, one other thing I want to do is I want to style this a little bit, okay? So, you know what? I'm getting carried away. I want to show you something else. This API has different... We're going to style all this. We're going to make a really cool interface for this. I dived right into making an interface. But what I want to do is I want to back up and I want to talk a little bit more about this API. So, the API actually has different ways to get at data, okay? And most APIs are like this. Some of them are even more complex, but this one has a way to search by make, model, color, and VIN, okay? So what I want to do is I want to show you those features, and then we're going to make an interface for all of that, okay? So if I want to search my API, I can go to a different, let's do this actually, okay? Remember how I told you your browser can make GET requests? This is actually how I like to experiment with APIs. So I encourage the same for you. Make your GET requests from here. There's also a really cool program called Postman. I don't want to show that today because there's a lot of toggles and switches and things like that in there to customize your request. But if you want to check that out, or you already know a little bit about it, it's really cool. I use it all the time, but for GET requests, let's just do it right in our browser because it's really easy to do. Now, the other thing that I can do is I can actually, so this is all the cars in my inventory right now, okay? The hot rides inventory. And it also comes with a photo, just like from Giphy. You can see it's there. We're going to use those in a minute. And it's got a couple other things. We've got the year, the make, the model, the color, and the VIN, okay? So it also comes with a search capability. So what we can do is we can say cars / okay, I'm going to do it here, cars / and we're going to go to the, we're going to say we want to search by make first, okay? And if I search for a Tesla, you can see all I get back is the 2 Teslas that are in there. I put 2 in there purposely so that we could get those back. Now, I can also get the color of, let's say, gray. One of the Teslas was gray, so we got that back. But you can also see that the Aston Martin Vantage was gray. I believe there's a white car in there. Can't remember which one it is. Oh, the other Tesla is white. And now we can also get the, well, we have a blue car in there. That's the Infinity, okay? So we can search by color. We can also search by make or model. And we also have a VIN. So let me go back to cars here real quick. Here, it's API cars / model / Vantage. Okay. So I showed you the rest of the API. I have like this search capability. This goes in what they call these parameters, query parameters. And they go to the API, and the API is configured to handle those query parameters. And so I programmed that in before you came here so I could show you just the front. I want to go ahead and make a interface for this so that you can feel more comfortable about using APIs, because it's one thing to just get the data, which is great with Fetch. Like I showed you how Fetch works. And again, the next video is going to be about posting data, like giving data to the API so that we can actually add a car of our own. But now let's move on to the next step of making a user interface for actually viewing the data that came back. Okay. All right. So now we have this one happening here, and what we'll do is refresh this again. Okay, now let's go ahead and get image in there. We can actually get anything we want from that data. You remember the data had like everything. It has the make, model, color. When you get back data from an API, you get to choose what you want to use. You can use it all, or you can use some of it. For this example, I just want to actually get in here and get the image. So I'm going to say that I want the name in an H1 because I want it to be bigger. And then what I'll do is I'll start kind of breaking this down so it looks a little bit better, sort of like that, just like it would in regular HTML. This is actually really hard without template literals. Otherwise, you have to, like, if you don't use these template literals, you have to keep creating like these containers, or like you have to say like car H1 or title, and then creating doc elements like that. And it's a pain. So what I recommend doing is what you saw me do, which is create one outer container, put all your content inside there, make a content element, and put all your stuff inside there with a template literal. This is the easiest way to do this. I guarantee you're gonna like that the best. There's other options. Code is like infinitely customizable, but my goal is always to like keep things simple for myself, and I like to teach the simplest thing I possibly can to others, because I want your life to be easy as well, right? Easy is better, right? So that being said, let's take a look at what it's looking like now. We should actually have an H1 in there. It's a little bit bigger. And then what I want to do is, since we're styling things, making a better interface, you know what? We're going to do this because we're going to need it in a minute, and it's going to change the style of the text too. Is we're going to go to Get UI Kit. Now, you can use any framework you want, but this is just going to help me style my buttons and my form inputs a little bit better, because we're going to make form inputs in a second. But the reason I like this one is because it's got like some sweet animations and it's really clean. It's also making the top list of like really good ones. So I'm gonna grab this. I'm gonna put this right over here in the top of my index, which I accidentally closed. All right. Now, just by adding that, it's gonna style a little bit. That's gonna give it a better style. Perfect. Just like that. And the inputs look better too, like text inputs and things like that. And that's pretty much all I'm using it for. So you can actually not even use it if you don't want to. Cars is in this div over here, and I can put a grid on that. Framework actually comes with one, just like Bootstrap and stuff, a grid, but I like CSS grid. You can check. I have a tutorial on that. It's amazing. But I'm going to say cars, which is all of them. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say display grid. And then I'm going to say grid template columns. And I'm going to say 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. I'm going to put, well, I have 5 of them. It's not an even number. So I'm going to end up having 3 on one row, 2 on another. We'll fix that in the next video where I actually add some cars to the API so that we could like have some more inventory, right? Think of this as kind of like an inventory management app that we're building throughout these this series of free YouTube videos here on Fetch. So, and then I'm going to put a grid gap, grid gap of, I don't know, 30 pixels. What do you think? Okay, let's take a look at what we got now. Sweet, so they're all kind of doing that now. Let's just put a margin of 30 pixels on this. 30 px, and that'll kind of push it away from the edges. Cool. That we want the text align to be center. Text align, center. And that should push our H1s into the middle there, making it look even a little bit nicer. Now, let's go over here, and below the H1, let's throw in an image tag, img. Remember we had, img source equals, we had the image and come back from our data. That's what's really cool about APIs is that it's like the data is already there. So you just making these loops and looping through it and stuff. It's really awesome. Whatever we did to get to make is the same thing we do to get to photo. So we can put this right here and say photo right in our image source. Okay. So let's take a look at what we've got. Boom. What do you think, guys? Is that awesome or what? I absolutely love it. When I studied programming and they got to the whole API part of it, because we spent a few weeks on HTML and like basic JavaScript and stuff like that, right? When we got to the API part of it, I was like absolutely blown away. I'm like, holy crap, I can make these amazing apps with other people's data. I don't even have to like use my own data. Like for instance, like Giphy, right? You can go get all these crazy Giphies and make a website with it. So yeah, and then you learn how to make your own APIs. So that's kind of the process, is like you first learn how to use APIs by consuming them, okay? Which is what we're doing today. And then you progress down the road to making your own APIs eventually as well. So, but consuming is way more fun than making, if you ask me, but they're both very important. So cool. And this is responsive. So if I open this up, you can see I'm making this cool app with this data that I have. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to use all the features of the API. So I need to be like, I want to build a couple features in the thing here. So first of all, I'm going to say div, I'm going to build an interface for using the API. So I have fetch, I know how to use it, but I'm going to have like buttons that call functions that use the API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say div, and then I'm going to say this div is going to have an ID of, I'm not sure what I want to call this. Searching, getting cars, search cars. I'm not sure what we're going to do here. Search cars, I think will be fine. And then I'm going to the first thing I want to do is say, I want to have a button that it says show all cars, which is what we're seeing right now. But I want that to come up only when I hit the button. Okay. So I'm going to say button is going to have an ID of the exact same thing. So I'm going to say ID equals show all cars. Okay. So now I'm going to make an event listener for that. Instead of running this on page load, I'm going to only run it when I hit that button. Okay. First of all, let's make sure the button looks good, because I bet it doesn't. It's going to look, so here's what it looks like without UIKit. Kind of dinky, right? But if I add UIKit to it and I say class name, class equals, it's going to be UI UK button, UK button primary. This gives you just kind of a cool blue button to get started with. Yeah, cool. Now, search cars is also going to be a grid. So I'm going to grab this real quick, and I'm going to say search cars. So I'm going to say search cars, because we're going to have some other inputs in there in a minute, and I'm going to put a margin on that and 1FR. Actually, that's pretty good for now. So let's just do that real quick. There we go. And it'll actually, the buttons will grow to meet their space. So the reason is because there's actually space over here for two other things. I don't want to go into grid, but this is equally divided into 3 parts based on these 1FRs. Okay, cool. So now I've got this thing here, and I want to make an event listener for that. Notice I have no JavaScript happening anymore at all. I just commented it all out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say document dot query selector, and I'm going to go for the show all cars. Then I'm going to say dot add event listener, and the event listener is going to be click, and then the second parameter of that event listener is going to be a callback function. And I like these to be spread out a little bit. Okay, so now anytime I make an event listener, I just like to say works. Okay, so let's see if that works. Get this open, click the button, wait, refresh, click the button, works. Yep, everything's working. So now what I can do is I can just drop this code that we already worked, we already like hashed through, made it work, and we can put it right in here. Boom, bada bing, comment it in. Now do this format thing, which will straighten everything up. And then this actually, I think, will look a little better tabbed in. And now what we can do is we can hit show all cars, and it just brings it back. Yay. Woo. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do, I want to make it so I can search by model, make, and color, things like that, right? So what I'm going to do, I want to show you one other thing real quick before I do that. If I hit show all cars again, Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, it just appends them to the DOM, keeps appending. And we don't want that to happen. That's going to become a problem in a little bit. What you want to do every time before you start a for loop coming back from a thing is you want to empty out your container. So the container is cars, and we want that emptied out. So I'm going to say .inner HTML equals this. Okay. And then that way, when I click the button, it just refetches it. And it might happen so quickly you don't see it, but it won't like re-show them twice, right? Right? It's just happening so quickly you can't see. That's going to help us in a second for when I do a search. It'll remove all these other things and then put that back in there, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that functionality up to use the other parts of the API. And I'm going to say this. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say input going to be, we're going to say type text placeholder. You know what? I tell you what, it only searches 3 things. So what we're going to do is we're going to do select. And I'm going to say class name, class equals UK select. That'll make it look a little bit nicer. And then the name is not important to me. And the ID is going to be type of search. I'm just making this stuff up. You'll see how that connects in a second. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to put an option in here. And the option is going to have a value of color. And then I'm going to do make, let's see here, put the color here too. Color. And then we're going to do make here. I forgot to show you earlier, but you can also do a Vin search through this thing. Oops, let's see. Let's do this. And we'll go ahead and put it in here. Color, make, model. Model should have probably came before make, but that's okay. And you know what? Let's fix it real quick. I mean, I think that makes sense to, do that. And then we're going to do Vin, okay? And the reason I'm putting this in as a select instead of letting them just people put it in the input is so that they have like choices. You don't want to give them an opportunity to mess up. So if you want to search by like that, okay, make, model, or Vin, okay. And then now I want a button pretty similar to this one actually over here. And it's going to say search by type. Okay, and actually, I'll just say search. I think that's clear enough. Okay, so we have search. So we can do show all cars or select this, and then hit search. Okay, and first of all, we need ID show. This is show all cars. Let's say search. This is search now. Okay, and we'll go to app, and I'm going to do hashtag search. I'm sorry, not hashtag. Not over here. What am I doing? Document.getElement by. You know what? Let's just make our lives easier and copy this. Okay, we're listening to this event. It's a click event. And we need to close that. Okay. Well, log works. And we're listening to search, right? That's what that button was. Okay. So let's refresh. Oh, we needed another input here because we're searching by make or model. We need an input that tells us which one is going to be, which one we're going to do. So that's going to be, so we actually need one more FR, I believe, or we could just put it on the next line. Yeah, let's just do one more FR. Okay, so we're going to do that. And then we need one input here, because we need to actually put it in. So placeholder, we don't want a placeholder. This will just be, placeholder is going to be equal to make, model, color, or Vin. Okay, now, this one is also going to need an ID because we're going to need to get this in a second. I'm going to just call this like type of search. Oh wait, I already have type of search up there. So that's the type of search. This is the term, search term. Okay. All right, cool. So let's do that. Now let's take a look what we got. Okay, so what are our 1FR? Oh, I put that on the cars. I meant to put that here, 1FR. Okay, refresh. And it looks kind of small, but it wouldn't if you were like that, right? Okay, so if we're on color, we put a color over here, right? And then we do search or whatever, okay? Now, what we're going to do now is this. We're going to come in here and we're going to make this. Remember how we did that? Okay, I'm going to put that right there. Okay, like that. We already made it work, right? Like I always make my APIs work outside of a click event, then I make it work with a click event. So let's just hard code something in here. First of all, we're going to say cars model QX80, and we know that returns data. Let's log it. The data, okay? Before we try to append it to the DOM, let's just make sure it's really actually working, okay? So I'm going to hit search, and then I just get that one car back, the QX80, right? Remember how we were getting that in our browser when we did this thing up here, right? Same URL, right? So now what I want to do, I want to put this information down here where our cars are at instead of the show all cars. Show all cars still works, right? Let's refresh. Now we'll do that. So we'll come over here and let's append it first. So check this out. Well, we're going to append the same thing. Like it's still going to be an array. If you look over here, let's do it again. It's an array, right? It's an array with one object. You can see the brackets on the outside. So what I can do is I can just take this and I can put it right here, right? Just like that. Refresh, search, and I get only the infinity because that's what I have in the URL. We're going to make that URL dynamic in a second. But here's one thing that's really important. You've heard of dry, don't repeat yourself. Well, what did I just do? I just repeated myself, right? And I always wait until I repeat myself before I'm like, oh, that's probably a good time for a function. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a function so I don't have to repeat myself. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say const put cars in DOM in site. I don't know. You could call it anywhere. Let's say inject cars. You can call it anything, whatever makes the most sense to you. I'm going to call it inject cars. And then I'm going to make this function. And the function is going to have all this same stuff inside of it, okay? Now, instead of writing this over and over again, okay, I can just say inject cars here. Inject cars. Now, notice, down here, I'm working off of data, but there is no data. Like, it does not going to know what data is here. Let's try this out here, okay? I want to prove a point real quick, okay? If I inject cars here or here, okay, it's not going to know what the data is. It's going to be like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm going to get an error, okay? So what I have to do is I have to pass the data to inject cars like that. Now, that means it's going to the thing, but I didn't put it down here, so it's not going to know what it is yet. So I'm going to put it here too. Now it's going to work. I hope that wasn't too complicated, but honestly, like I think it's easier to understand the best way to write something as opposed to the longest way to write something. Like there's two schools of thoughts there. Like, do you show somebody the more verbose way of writing something, or do you show them the shortest way of writing something? And you know, this might have confused a lot of you watching, and I apologize if it did. But this is the correct way. Okay, this is the shortest, easiest syntax once you get used to this kind of behavior and of doing things. Okay, so now watch this. I can either show all cars, and you notice the infinity doesn't get replicated twice, or I can hit search and I only have that one, right? And that's because I still have the URL of QX80 here. Now, what I need to do to change that is I will go into, I will go get the values from the form, okay? And if I actually wrap all of this, or let's do this. So let me go back here and get this real quick. I'm gonna get the search term. I need the type of search and the search term. That's what I need. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna say document. Let's do this. I want to make this really clear what's happening. I'm not going to do any API at all. I'm going to say document. Let's actually just copy this. We're going to make our life easier because we're getting another element. We're going to say search term, right? That's what we called it. And then we said type of search, I think. I did camel case. I probably should have just done dashes. Yeah, let's do it like that. I think that makes more sense when you're talking about selectors. That way it doesn't get confusing with your JavaScript. So we're going to say type of search and search term. Okay, cool. All right, so now we're going to say this here. And we're going to say dot value to get it. Okay, dot value. And we're going to equal it to something. So I'm going to say var search term equals document.getElement by ID, right? And var, let's say let, okay? It's better syntax. Let. I used var all over the place, but you can say let. Okay, let. Okay, I didn't use it all over the place. I used it in 2 places. Okay, so let's say let search, type of search, type of search equal that. Let me get an H on there. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to log these, okay? When I'm trying to get values from a form, I don't want to immediately start putting them in here because that's what I'm going to do in a second is put them in my query. I want to see what they are first of all. So I'm going to say search term, comma, type of search. Now let's see what we got, okay? So if I leave it on color and I put in blue, let's see what happens. We have blue and color. That's what we wanted, right? Kind of in reverse order, but that's what we did here, right? That's reverse. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those into my query. Why that wording is so small, I'm not sure, but I'm not super focused on this on making everything pretty right now. I'm like sort of doing it, but I'm also like more focusing on functionality. So that's why I'm doing it really quick. I don't know why that turned out so small. It should be like similar size as that, and I'll figure that out later. It's not hugely important. Let's take a look here. Oh, it's probably because I just didn't put the okay. And maybe it is important enough that I'm looking at it. So let's say class equals UK input, because that's what I'm styling my stuff with. There we go. Now it looks a little better. Oh, I love when things look nice. Okay, so I said I wasn't going to do that, but I did. But I love when things look nice. Okay, now it gives me encouragement to keep going, right? Some people say, "Oh, just focus on the functionality. Don't try to style it." But it's like, dude, look, I got to style this or else I'm going to go crazy. I got to make it look nice, okay? So if you can do functionality and never style anything because you're just learning how to do JavaScript, great. For me, I have to have a front end that looks half decent, okay? So that's where I'm at with that. So we're all different. We're all different people, okay? So be you as a programmer, and do what feels comfortable to you. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I have what I want. What do you think I'm going to do with it? I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it right here, okay? I'm going to switch this over to a template literal by doing backticks instead of quotes. And right here where this keeps changing, because this is either model or it's VIN or it's color, right? That's where that goes. I'm going to say $ type of search, right? Curly's type of search. It's going to get this because now it's going to either be any of those things. And then over here is the input. I'm going to put what that is. So I'm going to put $ and then we're going to do search term. Technically, I guess it's not a term if it's a color. Well, if it's a VIN or something, but I think it works. So you can maybe think of better wording for that, but it's going to work. And now what we can do is let's format this a little bit. Like, want our code looking pretty, right? Okay. Have a pretty front end and we'll have pretty code. Okay. Now, wow, look at this. Is like we hardly wrote any code to make such a cool app. It's awesome. Okay, cool. Now we're going to say color, and I'm going to say blue because I know there's a blue one in there. Hit search, infinity. Now I'm going to say white, search, and I get my Tesla. I know there's a couple gray cars in here because I did it on purpose. Gray. Isn't that so cool, guys? Now I can say model. Gray is going to return me nothing. I'll just get an empty array. Okay. You can actually make some functionality for that. If it's empty array, you could say, hey, there's nothing here. So, let's do that. So this is the reason why we want dry code, because, we don't want to have to rewrite this a bunch of times. And now we're here. So I'm going to say this. So I'm going to say if data is dot length, that's going to give me like if the array is what size of the array that it is. I'm going to say triple equals 0. If it triple equals 0, let's just inject into here that you know what I don't know what you're going to put in here. There's nothing matching your search. Okay, you can put whatever you want. Okay, now let's check this out here. So if I say color and I say yellow, I have no yellow cars, so I should get, there's nothing matching your search. Okay. So you can handle that however you want. You could have you could put a Giphy here saying, I'm sorry. We could actually request a Giphy and put that there if we wanted to. But for now, I think that works out pretty good. So let's actually just center it up. We'll put we'll put it in an H1. Because like I said, there's no reason things can't be a little pretty. So we'll say style equals text align. We're just going to do some inline CSS here. Just because it's only one little piece of it. So I think it makes sense. Oh wait, yeah, I thought it went away. Let's see what happens. Color. There's no color there. There's nothing matching. Oh, it's going into, why it's doing that? It's because it's going into the grid that we made because we're just injecting it into cars. We could make a whole nother spot for message, which would probably actually be a good idea. So check this out. We'll do message like this. This is how I work with APIs. I just kind of build things up oh, okay, nothing comes back. I want to tell my user. I want to make a nice user interface. So I hope this is helping you. And if you're hey, I already figured out how to use fetch and I don't feel like making interfaces, then you don't have to keep watching, but I think it's still really good stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject into message, okay? And message is not going to be in that grid. Message doesn't have a grid, okay? So now it'll go center, okay? So now we'll hit search. Search. There's nothing matching your search. Now if we do blue, that actually will stay there because we didn't program in to get rid of it. Let's do that. So now I'm going to get cars, but it'll still say that. That's not good. So what we want to do is we also want to, remember how we cleared that div? We also want to clear that div. We want to say message is going to be empty too. We don't want to inject it unless we know. Okay, so now it'll work. So if we put junk in, no, there's nothing there. Now we say white. I think there's a white car. Yeah, Tesla's in there. Cool. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. And yeah, that's a pretty much working API there, isn't it? This API over here, okay, Giphy. Remember how I'm getting this data and looping through it? I can do the same thing with this data. It's the same thing I had up when I showed you the screen. So if I want to get a Giphy and put it in my thing here, actually, what's funny is we could, this is a little advanced, but let's just do one here. Hopefully this isn't too advanced for you. It's only going to take a second. So there's only one here, okay? And let's see if I put in sorry. Let's see if I can let's see what this comes up with. Let's go to the images. Here's one right here. Original. Yeah, original. Here it is right here. Okay, so that's the image that we get back from Giphy. Let's get another API for if the data length is 0. Let's put an image in there. So we're gonna do fetch, right? Same thing we did earlier. Quotes, and then I'm gonna try to save some time. So I'm gonna grab this real quick, put this here. I don't want to inject cars, but what I want to do is log the data. Okay. Okay, and now let's take a look here. If I put in the wrong thing, I should be getting data back from the Giphy API, which is right here, right? So I'm going to go in here and let's see here. So I want to look at, why am I getting 10? Did I put in 10? I did. Okay. I probably should get 10 and then randomize them so you don't always get the same thing, but let's just go with 1 for right now so that because this is getting to be a long tutorial. So we got 1 and it still comes back as an array. And then if we open it up, let's dot notation to where we need to be. So we're going to do dot images, dot original, dot URL, right? So data is an object, and then there's another thing underneath it called data. So weirdly, you have to go to data.data. Now this will work. Watch this. Data.data. This is part of working with APIs. Actually, is really a good thing for you guys to see this. Have to think about it. There's our image. Boom, boom, boom. We want that in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to now inject it. We went back here, sorry GIF. And we're going to say document dot get element. No, query selector. And we're going to go to sorry GIF. The inner HTML is going to be a image. So we're going to put, we need template literals because we're going to inject this into there. That's our source. Okay. So we're going to say image src equals, oops, we're going to, yeah, we want that like that. And then we're going to do $ curlies. And the easiest way to do this is we can just put this right there. Right there. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, refresh. Oh, we got a different one that time. It's a dog. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on here. Oh, because we have rain. I think we're still doing rain here because I copied it earlier. So let's do sorry. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you could put anything you want here, and like you could randomize it if you want to. I'm not going to go into randomization of Giphies, but there's that one. Okay. So lastly, easiest way to center something. I know it's weird, but it's true. It's just put it inside of a p tag and align the. It's because the images can be inline with elements, and if you don't want to make a grid, you just want it to center up. Sometimes is the easiest way to do it. Now we did do a text align center up here, so we just do that. Put it on the P, and now let's see what we've got. Okay, search. Now this one's going to stay here, right? This one will go away, but the other one will stay here. If we do show all cars, it'll still be there, right? So now you know what we need to do, right? We need to clear that out. So we have another thing we need to clear, which is the sorry GIF right here. Sorry GIF. Okay, cool. Now let's try it. Refresh. Nothing. Show all cars. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so I showed you how to use the Giphy API. I'm not going to show you how to use this one. I just think it's a really cool one to like kind of get used to. It's like doesn't have a ton of data. It's easy to see. So like here's the Google API's books. It's easy to go to. So first of all, if you want to use Giphy API, just type in this, and then you can look at how I was using it too if you want. Sometimes it's easier not to look at technical documentation, but to like watch somebody use it. But here's the Giphy API, and this will tell you. Let's go to get started, I believe. Yeah. This will tell you how you can use this API, okay? Where's the endpoints? It should be here somewhere, some endpoints. I haven't been here in a while. I actually took that from my own notes. Here they are, here API endpoints. You want to look for endpoints. That's what we're looking for. So search endpoint, I think that's the one I was using. Search, what was I using? I was using search. Yeah, I'm using the search endpoint. So this is all the stuff that it can take. It can take like a rating, a random ID, a language, and you're going to need an API key, blah, blah, blah. And so these things can be pretty technical. You just have to play with them. Okay, that's all there is to it. And so there's another one I wanted to show you, which is the Google Books API. And there's like everything has an API. Like Edmunds has an API for actual real cars. And I mean, there's like facial recognition APIs where you post your face and it'll tell you if you're happy or sad and your emotion. And in fact, there's like if you like best APIs, you'll get like this rapid API right here. It has a whole bunch of APIs that you can use if you're trying to find places to get APIs. I wanted to show you based on my own local API because it's easier to show you on one that's simpler. I kind of made the simplest API I could to kind of just get you used to it. But I want you to know that there's like hundreds, if not thousands of APIs that are worth using. There's a love calculator. There's NASA. NASA API is pretty cool. My friend made a satellite that was like floating through space and you could like see where it was at. It was really cool with that API. I can't even remember all the APIs I've used because I've used so many of them. Urban Dictionary, that's probably pretty cool. You can search like cool slang words and stuff. And yeah, there's another API where you could like post text to it and it could tell you the mood of the text, if it's like happy or sad, just like the Face API. It's a joke API. I mean, you name it, guys. The sky's the limit. If you're wondering if there's something out there that could help you, there probably is. There's a weather API. You could put weather on your website by doing this stuff, and you can customize it. Yeah, and so here's a Google Book API. It was really easy to use. If you want to find that one, this one's super easy to use. You just say Google Books Book API. Okay, and then go to Getting Started. And then you type in quilting. So what I always do to get to the endpoint, here's the endpoint right here. Notice how different this documentation looks. Almost all of them are different. Here's a whole bunch of endpoints too. This one will give you books on quilting. You can get books on anything you want by changing the word from quilting to tigers, whatever you want to get. And this one doesn't need an API key. You just throw it in and start using it, right? And so here you go. Here's a link to something. Oh, that's just to itself. Here's the book, small thumbnail. Let's look at the thumbnail. Here's a large thumbnail. So here's a book on tigers that probably brought me back a whole bunch, right? Cool. So let me think for just a second. Yeah, APIs are awesome. Fetch is awesome. You should be using Fetch. You don't need jQuery. jQuery's yeah. JavaScript. So jQuery was around before JavaScript got like way better. Okay, JavaScript's in a better condition now, so you don't need to stress on that. You don't need to use jQuery for this. But if you're using jQuery to make GET and post requests, like go for it. That's your business. I did too for a long time, but then I learned Fetch and I was like, hey, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going to use Fetch. And yeah, application programming interfaces are awesome. So in the next lesson, which I'm really excited about, I'm going to be releasing these every few days until it's over. We are going to post data to this API. So we're going to keep building this bad boy, which, wow, look at how little code we wrote. It took an hour to write that little code, but I mean, I guess it's pretty complex, but I mean, like, how cool is that? Seriously, let's get rid of some of this code here. Like, we wrote literally like 43 lines of code and like even less HTML and CSS, and we made a bomb app. So next time we're going to post data. Okay, so it's called a post request. This was called a GET request, and you didn't see the word GET because it automatically turns into a GET request. But when you make a post request, I'm not going to complete one right now. You put in some options right here. We'll get to that next time, but it's really fun to actually be able to send data. So what we'll do is we'll go to our front end here, and this will be our search up here. We'll probably do something like this. Search cars. Let's do an H1 here. We'll say this is the H1. I don't know why it's not auto-completing. There we go. H1, search. Inventory. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll add another H1 and the ability to add to inventory down below, right? This is not looking so good. We're going to say style equals, we know that the grid has a margin on the all around it of 30. So we'll say style margin left, margin left will be 30 px. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Looking good, right? Awesome. So right down here, we're going to do our post. And then I'll tell you in the next video what we're covering after that, which is some other important stuff with Fetch to make a fully functioning API, fully functioning consuming of an API. And I appreciate you guys watching this. I know it turned into a really long video. I think this stuff is so cool, and I hope you do too. And until next time, last thing, please, if you can, be so kind, hit that like button and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Helps me out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you later. Have a great night. Bye.